My sister manipulated me and lied to my parents after I invested $3,000 helping her. When I had an emergency, she abandoned me. But months later, she got arrested for fraud, and my parents begged me to pay her bail. My answer left them speechless. I'm 29 years old, work in digital marketing. And honestly, I need to get this story off my chest because I've been dealing with this shit for months now, and I don't even know what to think anymore. My sister Ashley, who's 24, basically manipulated me in the worst possible way, and my parents, Karen and Steven, decided to believe all her lies instead of listening to me. And the thing is, I was the idiot who tried to help her from the beginning, but well, I guess that doesn't matter now. It all started like a year and a half ago, maybe two, when Ashley showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon crying, like literally sobbing, saying she couldn't take living with our parents anymore, that she needed her own space, that they were suffocating her, that they wouldn't let her breathe, the typical speech. And look, I understood perfectly what she was talking about because our parents have always been super controlling, especially with her since she's the youngest. I moved out when I was 21, and it was the best decision of my life. So when Ashley told me she needed to do the same, I thought, well, it makes sense. It's time for her to have her independence. The thing is, Ashley painted this whole picture of how everything was going to be. She told me she only needed help for the first month, that she already had some job interviews lined up, that she was ready to be responsible and prove to everyone she could do it on her own. She looked at me with those little sister eyes that always work on me and said, "Please, Daniel, you're the only one who understands me, the only one I can trust." And I, like the idiot I am, believed her completely. I thought, this is my chance to be the supportive older brother, to help her get ahead. So I did the math, checked my budget, and decided I could help her. I paid her first month's rent for an apartment she found, like $800, plus the deposit, which was another $800, and then I probably spent like $1,500 more buying her basic furniture. We went to IKEA one Saturday and bought a bed, a small couch, a table, dishes, pots, everything she needed to get started. I even bought her some groceries so she'd have food for the first few weeks. Total. I invested like $3,000 helping her, which for me wasn't exactly pocket change, but I thought it was worth it if it was going to help my sister get established. The deal was simple, or at least that's what I thought. I would help her with rent for 2 or 3 months max while she got a job, and then she would start paying her own rent. I told her clearly, "Ashley, this can't be permanent. I need you to understand you have to find work fast." She swore to me that yes, she understood perfectly, that she already had an updated resume, and that she was going to start looking for work literally the day after she moved in. The first 2 months I paid her rent without problem. I visited her often to see how she was doing, and every time I asked her about work, she always had some excuse. That she'd had an interview but they didn't call her back. That she was waiting to hear back from another place. That the job market was tough. And I believed her. You know what I mean? Because it is true that finding work can take time, and I wanted to be the understanding brother who didn't pressure her too much. But what I started to notice is that every time I visited her or we talked on the phone, she was always going out with friends, going to brunches, posting photos on Instagram of new cafes she was trying. And I thought, wait, if you don't have money and you're looking for work, how do you have time and cash to be going out so much? The third month I asked her directly, "Ashley, have you applied to jobs this week?" And she got super defensive, told me that yes, obviously. What did I think? That she was doing everything possible. But something in her tone didn't sound true. You know when someone's lying to you but you don't have concrete proof. I told her. She needed to take this more seriously because I couldn't keep paying her rent indefinitely, that I had my own expenses. She promised me she was going to double her efforts, that she understood my position. I paid that third month of rent thinking maybe she needed a little more time. The fourth month was when everything went to shit, literally. My car broke down, a repair that was going to cost me like $1,200 because the engine had some problem or whatever. I didn't have that extra money saved because I'd been spending on Ashley's rent, so I had to make the decision to fix it and not be able to pay her that month. I called her and explained the situation. I said, "Look, Ashley, my car broke down and I need that money for the repair, I'm not going to be able to give you rent this month. You're going to have to get it yourself or talk to the landlord to see if you can pay late. The reaction she had was absolutely disproportionate. She started yelling on the phone, told me, how could I do this to her? That I had promised to help her, that I was a liar, that I was abandoning her. I tried to explain that it wasn't abandonment, that I simply had an emergency, but she didn't want to hear anything. She told me textually, "This shows you never really wanted to help me. You just wanted to feel good about yourself." And she hung up. I tried to call her back like 5 times, but she didn't answer. For the next 2 weeks, Ashley completely ghosted me. She didn't respond to messages, didn't answer calls, nothing. I was honestly worried, because despite everything, she's my little sister and I didn't know if she was okay. I wrote her that, please at least tell me she was okay, that she didn't have to talk to me if she didn't want to, but that I just needed to know. Nothing had happened to her. Nothing. Total silence. Then, like 2.5 weeks after that, I get a call from my mom, Karen, and from the tone, she answered the phone, I knew something was wrong. She tells me, "We need to talk, Daniel. What the hell did you do to your sister?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And she starts telling me this completely distorted story of the events. According to my mom, I had convinced Ashley to move out, promising her I was going to support her, and then I simply abandoned her without warning, leaving her without any resources and about to be evicted. That Ashley had come to their house crying, saying she had no food, that I wasn't answering her calls, that I had washed my hands of her completely. I started explaining what really happened, that I had paid 3 full months of rent, that I'd bought her all the furniture, that she hadn't looked for work that whole time, that my car had broken down. But my mom didn't want to listen. She kept interrupting me, saying, "That's not what Ashley told me. She says you never bought her furniture, that you only paid 1 month of rent." And I'm like, "Mom, that's literally a lie. I have the receipts. I have the IKEA invoices. I have everything." But she just kept saying, "Why would your sister lie about something like that?" Then my dad, Steven, got on the phone, and he was even angrier than my mom. He started yelling at me that I was irresponsible. How dare I treat my sister like that they had raised me better than that. I tried to explain my side of the story, but he just kept saying, "I don't want excuses, Daniel. What you did is wrong, period." He told me I had to apologize to Ashley and fix the situation immediately. When I told him I had nothing to apologize for, that Ashley was the one who had lied, he told me I was selfish and hung up on me. I sat there in my apartment completely shocked, trying to process what had just happened. My sister had invented a completely false version of events, and my parents had believed her without even asking me first or giving me a chance to explain. I decided I needed to talk to Ashley directly and confront her about the lies she had told. I went to her apartment, unannounced. I knocked on the door like 10 times until she finally opened. I told her we needed to talk about what she'd told them. And that's when I saw a side of my sister I honestly had never seen before. She got super cold and calculating, told me she hadn't lied. That was her version of what happened. I showed her literally the receipts on my phone, the bank transfers, everything. And she just shrugged and said, "Well, that's your truth, not mine." I asked her how she could do this to me, how she could make up lies about me to our parents when I had done everything possible to help her. And you know what she told me? Literally, she said, "Maybe if you had kept helping me, I wouldn't have had to tell them anything. Like it was my fault that she decided to lie." I told her she was being completely irrational and manipulative, and she told me to leave her apartment. I left. They're feeling worse than when I'd entered. My parents called like 2 days later to say they wanted a family meeting to resolve all of this. I really didn't want to go, but I felt like I had to defend myself, that I had to show them the truth. The meeting was at their house on a Saturday afternoon. I arrived with a folder full of evidence. I literally brought the printed receipts, the bank transfers, photos from when we went to IKEA, text messages where Ashley thanked me for helping her, everything. The meeting was a total disaster from the beginning. Ashley arrived, acting like the perfect victim, with red eyes like she'd been crying, sitting next to my mom, who immediately put her arm around her. I took out all my documents and started showing them, explaining chronologically everything I had done to help Ashley. My parents looked at the papers, but it was like they weren't really processing them. You know, when someone has already made up their mind and no evidence is going to make them change their opinion. My mom was saying things like, well, but that doesn't change the fact that you abandoned her when she needed you most. And I'm like, how did I abandon her? I paid her 3 months of rent. I bought her furniture. I gave her time to find work and she didn't look for anything. My dad then said, that doesn't give you the right to leave her with nothing from one day to the next. I explained about the car for the 5th time, but it was useless. Ashley sat there saying almost nothing, letting them fight her battle. At one point I asked her directly, Ashley, tell them the truth. Tell them you didn't look for work for 3 months, that you spent your time going out with your friends. She looked at me and said with the most serious face, I did look for work, Daniel. I sent like 50 applications. It was such an obvious lie that even she must have known it was ridiculous, but my parents nodded like it was totally credible. The meeting ended with my parents telling me they were disappointed in me and that they hoped I would reflect on my behavior. I left there furious and frustrated, feeling like I had just wasted 2 hours of my life. The following weeks were weird. I basically stopped talking to my parents and Ashley. I didn't block anyone, but I didn't initiate conversations either. I was tired of all the drama and just wanted to get on with my life. Then, like a month later, I get a call from Ashley's landlord. He asks me if I know Ashley, if I know where she is, because she abandoned the apartment 2 weeks ago without notice, left several damages, and on top of that took some of the furniture that was technically part of the furnished apartment. The landlord had me in his contacts because I had been the one who signed as guarantor when she rented the place, something I didn't even mention before because I had already forgotten that detail. I told the landlord I had no idea where Ashley was, that we hadn't spoken in weeks. He told me he was going to charge me for the damages as guarantor. It was like $600. I paid because legally I had to, but I was absolutely furious. Ashley had not only lied about me, but now she had cost me extra money because she left the apartment like a completely irresponsible person. Then my cousin Julia, who lives in another city but follows Ashley on Instagram, sends me some screenshots. Ashley had been posting photos of trips, expensive restaurants, shopping. Not only that, but in one of the photos she was at the beach, like at an all-inclusive resort, and the photo was from 2 weeks ago, right when supposedly she was so desperate and without resources. Julia told me, I don't know what's going on, but clearly your sister has money from somewhere. I started investigating a bit more. Well, basically I asked Julia to send me more screenshots because I didn't follow Ashley on social media anymore. Turns out she'd been living a pretty expensive life the last few months. Expensive brunches, bars, shopping, weekend trips. All this while supposedly she had no job and was struggling to survive. The numbers just didn't add up. Someone was giving her money, or she was getting it in some way that wasn't legitimate. Then I received a message on Facebook from a guy named Jason, who I didn't know. He told me he was Ashley's ex-boyfriend and that he'd heard through mutual friends about what had happened between us. He told me Ashley had done exactly the same thing to him like 2 years before, that she'd asked him for help to move out, that he'd paid for things for her, that she never really looked for work, and that when he finally told her he couldn't keep helping her, she made up a whole story with her friends that he had mistreated and abandoned her. Jason told me he tried to explain the truth, but nobody believed him, and eventually he just had to walk away from that whole situation. Talking to Jason was revealing because I realized this wasn't something new. Ashley had a pattern of behavior of manipulating people to help her and then playing the victim when she no longer got what she wanted. I felt less alone knowing I wasn't the only one who had gone through this. But I also got angrier because it meant she knew exactly what she was doing. It wasn't a mistake or immaturity. It was calculated manipulation. The evidence kept coming from unexpected places. A girl named Emily, who had been Ashley's roommate like 3 years ago, contacted me after Jason told her to talk to me. Emily told me Ashley had borrowed $800 from her, saying it was a family emergency, and then simply ghosted her and never paid her back. Emily tried to contact her many times, but Ashley eventually blocked her from everywhere. Hearing all these stories made me feel stupid for having believed her, but also validated because it confirmed I wasn't crazy, that Ashley really was the problem. The most disturbing thing came when Jason gave me the contact of another person who knew Ashley more. Recently, this person, who preferred to remain anonymous, told me Ashley had been involved with some sketchy people. specifically a girl named Natalie, who apparently had some kind of business that sounded like a pyramid scheme or something. He told me Ashley and Natalie had been recruiting people to invest in something, promising them big returns, and that several people had lost money. I didn't have concrete proof of this, so I couldn't do much with the information, but it explained where the money for her lifestyle could be coming from. Like 2 more months passed where I basically had no contact with anyone in my family. My parents tried to call me a couple times, but I didn't answer. I honestly didn't feel like hearing more lectures about how I was the terrible brother. I was focusing on my work, on my friends, on my own life, trying to leave all that drama behind. Then one night, like 10 p.m. on a Thursday, I get a call from Ashley, which was completely unexpected because we hadn't talked in months. I answered more out of curiosity than anything else. Her voice sounded super casual and friendly, like nothing had happened. She tells me, "Hey Daniel, how have you been?" And I'm like, "Seriously? You're going to act like nothing happened?" She laughs a little and says, "Oh, come on, don't be like that. We're siblings. These things happen." She started telling me about her life, that she was considering moving to another city, that she'd met new people, like we were having a normal conversation between siblings. I asked her directly why she was calling. There was a silence, and then she said, "Well, I thought maybe we could forget about everything that happened and go back to being family. That she'd been thinking, and maybe we'd both made mistakes. Mistakes, like lying blatantly about me to our parents and making me pay damages for her apartment, were simple mistakes. I told her I wasn't interested in pretending nothing happened, that she had lied to me, manipulated me, and cost me money." She started getting defensive again, saying I was exaggerating everything. I ended up hanging up on her because the conversation wasn't going anywhere productive. 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, I get a call from my mom. From the tone, I immediately knew something serious had happened. She was crying. Her voice sounded broken, and she tells me, "Daniel, your sister is in jail." Apparently, Ashley had been arrested for theft. Not for petty shoplifting, but for stealing thousands of dollars from various people. The police had been investigating reports of a fraud scheme where Ashley and her friend Natalie had convinced people to invest money in a fake business. Some victims had lost up to $5,000 each. My mom was asking me to please help them pay bail, that Ashley was my sister, and that family supports each other in difficult times. I stayed silent for a moment, processing everything. Finally, I told her no, that I wasn't going to help, that Ashley had made her choices and now she had to face the consequences. My mom got hysterical, told me, how could I be so cruel, that when I needed help not to count on them. I told her that was fine, that if that was the price of having healthy boundaries, I accepted it. I hung up feeling bad for my mom because I know she's suffering, but also relieved that finally Ashley was facing real consequences for her actions. My dad called me later, calmer than my mom but equally upset. He asked me if I was really going to leave my sister in jail. I told him yes, that she had stolen money from innocent people and that she needed to be held accountable. He tried the argument that we all make mistakes when we're young. I reminded him that Ashley is 24 years old. She's not a kid. And that this wasn't a mistake but a series of conscious decisions to defraud people. The conversation ended with him telling me he hoped I could live with my decision. They eventually paid the bail, taking money out of their savings. Ashley got out of jail, but now she's facing criminal charges. Since then, I haven't had contact with any of them. My parents sent me some messages saying I need to forgive my sister, that family is forever, all that kind of stuff. But honestly, I feel more at peace now that I've established these boundaries, even if it means not having a relationship with them for now. Last week I saw on Facebook, through my mom's public profile, that they're organizing something to raise money for Ashley's lawyers. Part of me feels sorry for my parents, because I know this is costing them a lot of money and emotional stress. But I also feel like this is the result of years of enabling Ashley's behavior, of believing everything she said, of not establishing boundaries. If they had listened when I tried to tell them the truth about what happened with the rent, maybe they could have intervened before it got to this point. I don't know what's going to happen with Ashley's case, if she's going to end up in prison or reach some kind of deal. Part of me hopes she faces real jail time because I feel like it's the only thing that could make her really understand the gravity of what she did. Another part of me, the big brother part that grew up protecting her, still worries about her and doesn't want her to suffer. It's complicated, I guess. What I do know is that I made the right decision to distance myself. I've been going to therapy the last few weeks to process all of this, and my therapist has helped me understand that setting boundaries doesn't make you a bad person, that you can love someone and still recognize you can't help them if they don't want to change. I'm working on letting go of the guilt I feel, on accepting that it wasn't my responsibility to save Ashley from herself. My friends have been incredible during all of this. They've supported me and validated my feelings when my family made me feel like I was crazy or being cruel. I've been focusing on the healthy relationships in my life, on the people who do value and respect me. It's weird not talking to my parents. Sometimes I miss them. But I also realized that the relationship we had wasn't really healthy if it was based on me having to accept being the scapegoat for Ashley's problems. I don't have a nice ending or an inspiring moral for this story. The reality is that sometimes family fails you, sometimes people you love manipulate you, and sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away even if it hurts. Ashley will probably never admit she did anything wrong. My parents will probably always think I should have done more to help her. And that's okay. I don't need their validation anymore to know I did the right thing.